Welcome home, my little hellhounds. Tonight we have 3 great stories to sink our hellish teeth into. If you have any scary stories you want narrated on the channel, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter at homeofscares. Also, if you like this content, then don't forget to subscribe. And if this is the type of content you like, then sneak up behind the like button and give it the scare of its life. Now, let's get right into it. Something or someone told me I was going to die. Posted by mlone RGA. I have always been afraid of death. As a kid, I would stay up at night, frozen in fear, just thinking about the different ways I could just die. I was scared to go to bed out of fear of my thoughts. Looking back at it, I think I was just learning about the realities of death, and I had a pretty negative response to it, but it was nothing but a child with a bleak imagination. By the time I went into middle school, I was over it. I never had that fear again, except once. This time, it was different. The fear was paralyzing. It was something I have never felt before, and I feel the need to share it. Maybe see if anyone else has ever had this experience. It was about 7 years ago. I was probably 18 or 19 at the time. I was old enough where I was out of high school, but not old enough to sleep over at my boyfriend's house. My boyfriend at the time and I used to spend our days off at his house. He had the entire upstairs to himself, so of course we would spend all of our time up there. We were in our honeymoon phase, so we never wanted to be apart, but knew I couldn't sleep over, so we would usually sleep together until the last possible moment, and then he would drive me home, or I would drive myself home, depending on how I got there. This one night we fell asleep like we always do, but at around 10 p.m. I remember waking up with this dreadful feeling. No bad dream, no creepy noise, just a feeling of deep, soul-sucking dread that woke me up. I remember laying on my side, looking out the black window. The feeling is so hard to put into words. I felt scary, angry, upset, but I also felt acceptance. For some reason, I understood why I was feeling this way, and that I needed to accept whatever was causing this dread. Finally, as I looked out the window in paralysed fear, something told me, "You're going to die in the next hour." I don't want to say it was a voice, but it wasn't my internal thoughts. It was like something was speaking to me, basically telling me I was going to be dead by the end of the night. I remember the dread just turned into this unexplainable sadness. I can only imagine that it was a similar feeling to when a doctor gives someone their death date. That was how real it felt. With this new information, I started to argue with the voice. It was a real conversation, but it was all in my head. But I want to be clear. It wasn't like my internal thoughts. It was like something was talking to me. I remember just begging the voice to not let this be it. I didn't want to die yet. I wasn't ready. I think I even said to my head, I'm not happy enough to die yet. But the voice was persistent, like a parent kindly convincing their kid why they need to go to school or to the doctor. It was comforting me, telling me that it just had to happen. Finally, and begrudgingly, I accepted it. Like a photograph in my brain, I can still see myself lying there, just accepting that this was going to be my last night, my last moment with my current boyfriend, last moment in this body, my last moment on this earth. It was the worst feeling I have ever felt, and I can confidently say, even after some pretty traumatizing deaths in my family, this feeling stays as the worst. So what happened? I'm telling this story, obviously, so I didn't die. This is where it gets weird. The alarm on my boyfriend's phone finally went off. I sort of got out of my trance, but now I was just numb. I had no other thoughts. I felt like a robot going through the motions, very forcefully going through the motions, I might add. Just a note, I have had severe depression, which caused disassociation, so I know what it feels like to disassociate. This was not that. My boyfriend didn't seem to notice anything off. I must have hidden it very well. Or maybe he chalked it up to me being tired. I didn't say anything. I just let things go on. Like a prisoner walking to their execution, I walked to my boyfriend's car so he could drive me home. Once I got in his car, the feeling just got worse and worse, and I knew that I was close to the moment. I assumed it would probably be a car accident. Since the moment I got in the car, I felt like I had locked myself into this fate. My boyfriend takes off and we're on our way. I felt my stomach drop as he hits the fork in the road and is about to take a left onto the main road. I felt like once we took that left, my fate was sealed. We always hit this fork. If you take a left, you get on the main road. If you go straight, you go through the back roads. We never go the back roads unless there's traffic. It was midnight. There was no traffic. The main road is the best option. But my boyfriend hesitates. He turns off his blinker and goes straight towards the back roads. I am not kidding when I say that horrible feeling just stopped the second he turned off his blinker and went straight. All the dread was lifted. I can't begin to explain how happy I felt. I felt so much joy at that moment because I knew that my boyfriend saved my life, maybe even his life, and he didn't even know it. I remember finally feeling my brain reconnecting to my body, and all I said was, "Why are you going this way?" And he just shrugged and simply responded, "I don't know. Felt like going this way." I didn't even question it. I didn't even explain the feeling I just had. I was just so fucking happy that I had just avoided death. 3 years later, I had completely forgotten this moment. It was a little weird moment at this point, but nothing that stuck with me. I remember me and my friends were talking about weird experiences in class, and I remembered that night I didn't tell anyone about it. I just chalked it up to some dumb overreaction, but I figured why not share it with them makes a fun, scary story. As I was explaining it to my friends, I texted my boyfriend, who I was still with at the time. I remember asking him, "Hey, you probably don't, but do you remember this one night a few years back where you went the back roads instead of the main road?" I didn't think much of the text. I figured he would just probably say, "Nah, why?" And then I would just tell him the story and excuse it as me being over dramatic. But his response made my stomach drop. Yeah, I remember that night. I had this horrible feeling to not go down the main road. So I went the back roads. His response confirmed something I never wanted to believe, that the feeling I had was real. We were supposed to die that night. We both finally talked about it. Apparently, he only had the feeling when he got to the fork in the road, but it was the same feeling, that feeling of complete dread and horror, and a voice told him, "Don't go this way." It's been about 9 years since that night. I am no longer with that boyfriend, but I think about that night a lot now. I wonder what would have happened. Was that God who was talking to us? Was I really going to die? I'd like to think it was something supernatural that told my boyfriend to not go that way. Maybe it was a different voice that wanted to save us. Maybe that voice was talking to me, had a change of heart. Who knows? Maybe it was a test by God and I passed it. You know the story of Abraham and his son, but let's be honest, I am no Abraham. I like the idea that I was saved, and I look back at that moment with joy now, because I know that I probably received a second chance at life. I have never had that feeling since then. It was a once in a lifetime feeling, and I know that. I know it wasn't like all those times as a kid. It wasn't an irrational thought, it was a warning. I'm sure one day that feeling will come back. Hopefully not anytime soon. But I'm sure I'll be more prepared for when it comes back. My brother and I saw what we can only explain as a zombie, posted by Forgetful Nerd. I saw a post that reminded me about this. Here it goes. I was drinking with my brother one night. The weather was bad, so the bars were closed and the streets were gross. We stepped out onto his front porch for a smoke and saw him, a man, not just an ordinary man, a zombie. He was groaning and dragging one leg behind him. My brother and I watched, puzzled as he got closer. Thinking it was a joke, we looked at each other, then back at the man. Then I looked behind him. The tracks he was leaving in the snow. He had shuffled like this down the whole street. Stunned in silence, my brother and I watched as he slowly made his way closer. Neither of us moved. We couldn't. Then he stopped. His head snapped to look at us. The sound that came out of him was not anything I had ever heard or have heard since. It wasn't something I had even heard in horror movies. My brother and I looked at each other, threw our cigarettes and ran inside. We got into his apartment and he grabbed a knife. I grabbed a frying pan, Don't judge me. It was the first thing I saw that I could use to arm myself. We stood ready and watching, waiting for the fight of our lives, with patient zero, and then nothing. We pepped each other up and opened the door. We stepped out onto the porch together and looked everywhere. Nothing, and his tracks just ended where we last saw them. We searched and searched, and nothing. No footmarks, no continuation of that creepy drag mark. I knew it was more creepy, but it is still one of the strangest things I have ever experienced. Jammed. Posted by Snoo Apples 661. I haven't been to my nan's since this happened. I know it's not the reason why I don't go to my nan's, but I haven't been there since this incident happened. Mostly because she is farther away from us, like I think 6 or 8 hours away. We would have to go on a boat to meet her at a city, so we would go there a few times a year when we were kids, on a rocking, bumpy ride to the city. Before we would get to our nan's, we would hang out at this McDonald's that had a playground. It was the only McDonald's we knew that had one, so we would go there each time we visited our nan's. All I can say was that it was like a dream to have a place area in a restaurant, like it was some fantasy world that couldn't exist. But after the usual McDonald's feast, we would go to Per Nanny's place to sleep over for a week. During the week, however, me and my sister and my nan had to go down to do some laundry, so we did just that, heading down to the elevator and pressing the button to go down. That's when the most unfortunate timing had happened, as the elevator got stuck. I never had gotten stuck in an elevator before. I always thought they were built masterfully to make sure this situation would never happen, like the movies. So all I remember was crying on the spot, worrying that we would drop down, being one of the scariest ways to die for me. I thought I would be another nameless face on the news, where my mum would watch in horror and alone as she hears the news about her kids. I wasn't sure how my sister was thinking at the time. I didn't see the look on her face. I was stuck in my own thought bubble as my nan made sure to tell us that we are going to get out of this alive. Keep in mind, this was before cell phones were really a thing. I didn't know how she could get us out without a home phone to phone the front desk. I looked up at her, wiping my fearful tears as she presses the buttons on the elevator, making us wait there for a while, hoping someone would come in and save us. When someone did finally come to us, we were let off the elevator, making me fall down to the ground, shaking and smiling that I was alive and that I wasn't going to be a faceless face on the news, and that I'll be able to see my family once again. I know this isn't your typical slasher or spooky ghost story, but being placed in a situation that wasn't even our fault, being unsure that something would break and fall was a scary thought, and honestly, I didn't know what I'd do if I were alone in the elevator. And that's it for tonight, my little hellhounds. Thanks for listening. If you have any scary stories, then submit them to Reddit r/homeofscares and follow me on Twitter @homeofscares. Don't forget to subscribe and click that like button and the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.